What is going on, Bucs fans? Back at it here at the Power Parlay podcast on the Sick Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, JC Allen, and we've got a good show for you today. We're going to go behind enemy lines. Bucs have a big game. They're in the gauntlet stretch, right? They're in the gauntlet. We talked about it. So far, they've got wins over the Eagles and the Saints, an overtime loss against the Falcons. Here's another stretch right here. This next 4 games, starting with the Baltimore Ravens, but the Atlanta Falcons then coming at home. Creamsicle game, a Monday nighter against the Kansas City Chiefs away. And then, of course, the San Francisco 49ers come to town before their bye week. But we're going to focus on this Monday night game against the Baltimore Ravens. We've got a special guest coming in behind enemy lines. He's going to break down this Ravens team who got off to a tough start, 0-2. Obviously, very, very close loss against the Chiefs in week 1, and then kind of imploded at the end there against the Las Vegas Raiders, but they've been on a 4-game winning streak. The running game has been on top of the world right now, and we'll dive into that and see if the Bucs are going to have a chance to win this game on Monday, where they can exploit them, and where the Ravens might try to take advantage of some of the Bucs' weaknesses. We'll get into all that and more after the break.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Pirate Parlay.
Battle intercepted, picked off in the end zone. Bucs are going to beat the Chiefs. We're the champions of the world.
The sickest Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. It's going to be sick.
Back at it here on the other side again. Thank you for tuning in to the Pirate Parlay podcast here on the Sick Podcast Network. Before you guys do anything, make sure you're liking, subscribing, turning on notification reminders. That way, anytime we go live, you're not surprised and you'll know. We'll be back to our normal routine here coming up at the end of the month. Hopefully, once my son's football season dies down, I'll be back to Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 o'clock. So you know when to find me, not this random kind of all over the place stuff. But that being said, we're going to get right into it. We're going to jump into a little bit of Ravens talk with our good friend Todd Karpovich. He is a writer for Baltimore Sports. He also contributes at the Associated Press and the Baltimore Sun. He's boots in the ground. He's in the facility. He's got his pulse on this team. Todd, welcome in. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so let's just dive into it. I kind of mentioned it briefly. An 0-2 start, four games in a row for the Ravens. What's been the difference after those first 2 games that's propelled them to get onto this winning streak?
I think a lot of it has to do with Todd Monken's playbook. Ravens didn't plan their stars during the preseason, so they came into the season cold. They trying to get adjusted to each other. Todd Monken, Derrick Henry was signed as a free agent. Started to find his way around the offense. So they got off to a slow start. Could have won the Chiefs game. They lost it by a toe. They blew a 10-point lead against the Raiders in the fourth quarter in the secondary. And then all of a sudden, it just clicked. And now they're really, teams are stacking the box against Lamar Jackson to stop Derrick Henry, and he's beating him through the air. So that's been the key. That's been the key for him. He's having an MVP caliber season, and so is Derrick Henry. So they're more comfortable in this offense. But again, with the Ravens, they're going to be judged on what they do in the playoffs. They've already had great regular seasons. They had the NFL's best record, 2 times in the past 4 years, 5 years, whatever it is. So this is Super Bowl bust season for the Ravens.
Yeah, you look at what they've done the last 2 years, really. Not many changes. It's a credit to their draft capabilities. But last year, the big addition was Zay Flowers, and Odell Beckham Jr. was the talk. This year, not many big changes on the team, other than you mentioned him, Derrick Henry. They lost a couple guys. They lost a couple starters on Patrick Queen. Went up to the division rival Pittsburgh Steelers. They lost a couple other guys as they lost a couple other guys as well, starters on the offensive line, and Zeitler, and a few other players as well. But they've taken the next man up approach, and they've put guys into starting roles. Another Geno Smith as well. They lifted guys like Trenton Simpson, who they drafted in the second round last year, into the starting role. Marcus Williams now at safety. Roger Rosengarten, who they drafted in the second round this year, at right tackle. So, how do the Ravens kind of continue to be one of these NFL powerhouses and top tier teams, as they're continually, not really looking outside in free agency, not really adding but kind of, promoting guys from within.
Well, they build their team through the draft, which they have a foundation there. So guys learn how to play the Ravens way. The offensive line, Rosengarten was behind Pat McCurry, and then Voorhees got hurt at guard, and they switched it up, and the offensive lines worked better. And then their GM Eric DeCosta has a really good philosophy of, balancing the roster, having some veterans, in the mix, and also having some young guys playing. So they're constantly sort of evolving, So as the older guys sort of, move on or get pushed out, the young guys are right behind him. So that's been a really good that's really been a good strategy for the Ravens. I don't understand why more NFL teams don't sort of follow that model, sort of having that balance of veterans and young players. But again, the Ravens, they have to really start winning some playoff games and maybe bring them a championship. That's how they're being judged.
Yeah, I bring that up because you look at no further than Tampa Bay and what Jason Light's been able to do. And it's kind of the same retrospect, draft and develop players and elevate them into starting positions, maybe even, when they do have veterans that aren't pushed out yet. They made a move this offseason to trade Carlton Davis for an elevated guy like Zion McCollum, and many people thought he weren't ready. And now he's been one of the premier cornerbacks in the NFL through the first 6 weeks. So it's kind of that contrasting and comparison between the two franchises. Very good at drafting, very good at developing, good at getting the young guys on the field, giving them experience to go ahead and do what they do best. But again, you mentioned bringing in those veterans and having that good mix, and the Bucs have done that as well. The Ravens did that with a pretty bold move this offseason, bringing in Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry leading the NFL in rushing yards. He's just been dynamic on the ground for the Ravens so far. What was the biggest surprise? Maybe what's been the talk about Derrick Henry and what he's been able to do? Because the Ravens have always been a rushing team more so than a passing team. But how has he elevated it so far this season?
Well, they wanted to trade for him last year for Tennessee at the trade deadline, and the Titans wouldn't go for it. I think if the Ravens would have gotten him, they probably could have won the Super Bowl. Honestly, I think they would have beaten the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game because they would have run the ball more with Derrick Henry. So he comes in and he's 30 years old, he's been asked numerous times whether he feels old, but he's such a hard worker. He takes care of his body. He's a workout warrior. So the biggest surprise I think with Derrick Henry is how many carries he's getting, because the Ravens, they sort of wanted to limit his carries to make sure he's healthy second half of the season, postseason run. But he's been the closer. He's breaking off 30-yard runs in the fourth quarter, demoralizing teams. He's just been an absolute beast. And with him and Lamar Jackson, the 1-2 punch back there, the teams have not figured out how to sort of the first few weeks, Derrick Henry couldn't understand the offense, but adjusting, he started slow. But now the fact that he understands Todd Monken's offense, running behind fullback Pat Ricard, running behind the left side of the offensive line, they really have something rolling here. And even teams now, like I said, even when they're stacking the line, Lamar Jackson is throwing the ball to 7-8 guys a game. He's finding guys open. So Lamar Jackson's more comfortable he's ever been in offense. So they're clicking all cylinders. The biggest surprise is Derrick Henry, the amount of carries he's getting. Now the Ravens do have Keaton Mitchell, who will be back in the next 2 weeks, an explosive runner who could take some of the burden off Henry. So that's gonna be a really neat dynamic when he gets back.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what Derrick Henry's been able to do the first 2 years of his career, kind of in that rotational role. His 2017 season at 176 carries for 744 yards. This season, it's 119 carries. Again, getting the ball a lot, but 704 yards. So he's already almost smashing his what he did in that role there. And you can see the trend of him potentially getting close to 300 carries this season, which he hasn't done since 2022 when he had 1,500 yards and 13 touchdowns. So he's already has 8 touchdowns on the season. So if he can continue to kind of be that level of a player, yeah, he's definitely going to be an asset for this Ravens and difficult for teams to stop and game plan against. In addition to a guy like Lamar Jackson, who you mentioned it, between the two of them, they already have over 1,000 yards rushing. Lamar's got 400 yards, 400 and change yards. And Derrick Henry's obviously just over 700 yards there. But when it comes to game planning against this too, you mentioned it kind of stacking. They're trying to stack the box and stop Derrick Henry. But we know what Lamar Jackson can do with his legs. We've seen it multiple times in his career. How much of a luxury is it now for the Ravens to have not only just a run game that's dominant, but also to still have your quarterback who can do what he can do with his legs as like a human joystick.
Well, yeah, Lamar's 1-1. I mean, he's 22-1 against NFC. And the reason for that is the NFC teams don't see a guy like Lamar very often. You know, he's a dynamic player and he's very hard to game plan for. And he's in his, he's in his 7th season. He's throwing the ball best he has. He's staying healthy. He's got the big contract, so that's out of the way also. So yeah, Lamar, he's looking on his 3rd MVP. But again, Lamar's very humble, very good guy to talk to, and he doesn't care about any individual honors. His focus is winning a Super Bowl because that's how his legacy is going to be remembered. And I think if he can stay healthy and Derrick Henry can stay healthy, the Ravens got a really good shot to go deep in the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's not just, as you mentioned, it's not just his arm, it's his legs, it's his arm too. Lamar Jackson through the first 6 weeks has 1,500 yards passing, 10 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Been very clean with it. He's been sacked only 7 times on the season as well. You mentioned kind of had to move around some guys on the offensive line. They also had to replace some guys on the offensive line with Simpson and Zeitler going in free agency. Just talk about what he's been able to do as a passer this season. Especially featuring his favorite target, Zay Flowers, who they drafted last season, and emerged as his number 1 target.
Yeah, he's throwing better outside the hash marks, which is key for him. He's hitting on some deep balls. The key too was teams used to go to cover 0 against Lamar, and that gave him fits because he couldn't figure out when they were bringing those guys who were getting man coverage. He really couldn't handle the pressure. Now with cover 0, he's getting rid of the ball quicker, and he's finding guys who can catch the ball. Zay Flowers has emerged as a top receiver, which is taking some pressure off Rashad Bateman, who was a number 1, also former number 1 pick, who sort of put a lot of pressure on himself to be the guy. And he dealt with some injuries, various injuries since he's been with the Ravens after, he was healthy throughout his career at University of Minnesota. So Bateman is sort of the number 2 guy and is catching a lot of balls. He's getting 7-8 targets a game and catching 5 or 6 of them for big time gains, and also catching touchdowns. Now, Mark Andrews came alive last week. He has the tight end. Hasn't been active the first couple of weeks. I thought, he dealt with an ankle injury last year on a hip drop tackle against the Bengals, so he missed a bunch of games, and he got into a car accident this summer training camp, which I think it affected him a little more than the Ravens were letting on. So I think Andrews getting healthier. He's going to be a key target. Charlie Kohler, 3rd string tight end, has caught some balls, and then Isaiah Likely, who's a beast inside the red zone. So Lamar's got some weapons. He's finding ways to get the ball. His first read and second read are much quicker than in the past. So he's getting the ball to his playmakers, and he's doing it quickly. That's been a difference.
One thing that they've been able to lean on heavily too with this offense is play action. When we have a dominant run game, we all know we don't need to have a dominant run game to utilize play action. But when you do, it sets it up so much better. So their uses of play action this year seems higher than past years. What has that been able to do to kind of help this offense? They're scoring 29 points, average 29 point whatever, but we don't count fractions. 29 points, on average per game. What has the play action been able to do to help them, move the ball and move it successfully down the field?
Well, they're so dangerous. Lamar's such a dangerous player. When he does play action, defense they got to do that 1 second pause. What's he going to do with the ball? Is he going to throw? Is he going to run? So, yeah, I think that's been key because he's such a dangerous player. And guys spy him, but sometimes he's so quick it doesn't matter. And Todd Monken likes the rhythm of the play action. And Lamar Jackson also has more freedom this year to change the play to line of scrimmage. And he hasn't disclosed how much he's been doing it, but he said it's been a fair amount. And you can sort of see it when it happens. He'll call out of a play and they'll sort of shift the receivers and the running backs. So yeah, Lamar, the play action suits Lamar very good. So does the RPO also. They're doing a really good job with that too.
Yeah, when you have a guy that's that dangerous where you can utilize play action, a guy like Derrick Henry, but you still don't know if Lamar is going to peel off and run it. That definitely adds a layer of explosion to an offense, especially with Todd Monken. We know how creative he can be, coming from Georgia, former Bucs coach as well. But he's definitely got this team on offense clicking on all cylinders. Before we hop over the defensive side of the ball, just want to give a shout out to one of our sponsors here at Power Parlay, the Tampa Bay Bucks Cruise. So excited about this. I've been telling you guys so much. Time is running out. Tick tock. Get your tickets now. So from March 7th to March 10th in 2025, trip down to Key West and Bimini, Bahamas out of Fort Lauderdale. You're not going to want to miss this. So many awesome players are going to be on there. Jordan Whitehead, Brad Johnson, Mike Allstott, Trey Palmer, Tristan. Oops. Just gave that away. If you guys are watching, you know someone else is going to go. That hasn't been announced yet. But Kalijah Cansey, Yaya Diaby, Jamel Dean, so many other guys are going to be on there. Whoops, sorry. Hope they're not watching this. Didn't mean to spoil it for them. But yeah, so many guys are going to be on this. Luke Gedeke as well. Derrick Brooks, so many legends. Dexter Jackson. The list goes on and on. It's an unforgettable vacation that will feature a variety of events, including a sail-away party, trivia contest, bingo, cocktail parties, player panels, a thrilling water volleyball game competition that they do, theme parties, and so much more that keep the fun going all cruise long. Again, you're not rushed through like an autograph line. You have time to talk to these guys, get to know who they are off the field as well, not just the name and number on the back of their jerseys on Sundays, Mondays and Thursdays, sometimes Saturdays. But don't miss this awesome opportunity to create lasting memories with not just Bucs fans from around the country, but the team itself and the players. Check out Tampa Bay Bucs Cruise now. Get your tickets before they're gone. We're closing up shop here at the end of November, so time is a ticking. So get your tickets while they last. And I just spoiled a surprise. So you guys know another big name that's going to be on that cruise. So definitely check that out. Whoops. Hopefully they're not mad. But jumping to this defensive side of the ball, again, not many additions, right? They haven't really brought in many players. This past season, again, last season I already mentioned earlier, they drafted Trenton Simpson from Clemson in the second round. He's now their starting inside linebacker, taking over for Patrick Queen. This year they drafted Nate Wiggins, cornerback. He's a little behind on the depth chart, but he's still getting some plays in here and there as well. I think one of the biggest additions, low-key, was Kyle Van Noy last year. Started off in the practice squad, quickly was called up to the active roster, finished with 9 sacks, already has 6 sacks this season, kind of showing out over there. And then another name that was just, added to the practice squad, but now elevated to the active roster, Yannick Ngakwe. He's a guy who's been very productive throughout his career. So let's start with the defensive front seven. Talk me through the offense, the defensive line, which features, of course, Justin Madubuike, who just broke the bank this offseason, 4-year, $94 million contract, and how this defensive line as a whole has been able to limit offenses from getting anything on the ground going with just 59 yards per game on average.
Yeah, Ravens number one run defense with Madubuike, Travis Jones, Michael Pierce, the 3 big guys in the middle. Nobody can run on them. Now that said, teams sort of had to get away from the run because the Ravens have a lead. They've had to throw the ball more, and they're attacking the secondary. But the front seven defensive line's been almost impenetrable. They're giving up 59 yards a game rushing, which is crazy. And no, they haven't faced any really great running backs. They faced some pretty good ones, and they've shut them down. They got a break last week with Washington, but their starter was out. But the front seven, and they do a good job getting pressure on the quarterback, so that's been key. Ravens also have 19 sacks on the front seven. The biggest issue, now they did lose Mike McDonald, defensive coordinator, to the Seattle Seahawks as the head coach, and they hired Zachary Orr, who was a linebackers coach and played for the Ravens as a linebacker. So that's been a big adjustment. Zach Orr's a young guy, he's 34 years old. He's still finding his way. I think he's very good coaching the front end of the defense. The back end's been a little bit challenged, so yeah, that needs to be sorted out. But yeah, so that's been the biggest change for the Ravens on defense, the new defensive coordinator.
Yeah, I think when you look at it too with this Ravens, front seven as a whole, they made the move for Raquan Smith a couple years ago, and it's paid off benefits. He made it All-Pro last year. You look at obviously the loss of Patrick McQueen hurts, who made an All-Pro as well, but Madubuike and you kind of look at who they played. I'm glad you mentioned that because not that the Bucs have a very strong lead back, but they really haven't been tested. Isaiah Pacheco, I think, was probably the closest thing they've been tested with Zamir White. I'm sorry, and the most yards. Yeah. Yeah, Zamir White, the Cowboys backfield's a mess. The Bills backfield is, what it is. I think Cook is a good player, but very inconsistent at times. Chase Brown for the Bengals is someone that is still trying to find his way. And then, as you mentioned, the Commanders were down there running Brian Robinson last week too. So with the offensive explosion, there's that thing, momentum, not just in games, but carrying over. I think right now the Ravens are riding the momentum, 4-game win streak. The Bucs are, we'll see if they're riding that momentum in the run game. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they challenge them with this front seven, with the trio of backs they have.
Sean Tucker went to my high school, Calvert College, Towson,
Okay.
Maryland. And
there you go. Yeah.
My daughter goes to Syracuse. We got a good connection here with Tucker.
Look at that.
The player of the week. Awesome. So,
yeah.
I'm pulling for Tucker.
Yeah. # pleased. So, yeah, I mean, that's going to be part of it, right? How do they use all three of these guys, and how do they attack the Ravens? If you had to say one kind of running style would work best against them, is it more that kind of pound it guys, the shifty move around guy? Is it the patient runners? Kind of which one of those guys, would have more success? And going even deeper as far as scheme wise, gap, duo, pin pull, zone, which is having the most success so far against this Ravens front, even though it hasn't been a lot.
It's a smaller, quicker runners, guys who get outside. They're not scared of big, burly running backs trying to pound the line. That plays right into their strengths. The biggest challenge they have at running backs is sort of smaller guys, quick guys who can get outside and find holes and can weave, because some Ravens sometimes they have trouble finding the ball, with those guys. So that's basically been, and it hasn't been, like you said, it has not been, a lot of guys have not had success, but the guys who seem to sort of can get yards are the smaller, quicker backs who can get outside and get away from the tacklers.
That plays into Bucky Irving's strength. So I'm sure we'll see a lot of him this week. Looking at that's outside linebacker room, Kyle Van Noy and Odafe Owe. Obviously Yannick Ngakoue is going to be part of that rotation now coming this week as well. The production there, what kind of problems do you think they're going to be able to present to guys like Tristan Wirfs and Luke Goedeke? Obviously those two, Tristan is one of the best left tackles in the league, and Luke Goedeke's, ascending to be one of the best right tackles in the league. How do you think those matchups go? If you kind of had an advantage for one of these players, maybe working against them, what kind of advantage do you see there?
I think, the Ravens, the biggest challenge with the Ravens is they'll blitz safeties, they'll blitz cornerbacks. So it won't just come from the outside linebackers. They'll send Kyle Hamilton in, through the seam. They'll send a cornerback in. So the biggest challenge for the Bucs is finding guys coming in for the pass rush, because it won't be traditional outside linebackers and edge rushers. It'll be guys coming from all over the place. So that's going to be the big. They have to use a tight end there, bring a tight end to help with blocking, maybe in a running back. As far as picking up extra defenders, because the Ravens do like to blitz. So we'll see how Baker Mayfield can handle that. He's not the most mobile guy, but he can get rid of the ball quickly, and he has wide receivers who can catch the ball. So he can throw the ball downfield, and maybe even get a PI if he has to, as far as when they're coming. But the Ravens, they blitz from every place. So that's going to be the biggest challenge for the Bucs, is picking up these blitzes from who's coming.
Yeah, all-pro safety Kyle Hamilton already has a sack on the season. So he'll come in a variety of different ways. We saw that last year, obviously leading to his all-pro nomination. Before we move into the secondary, because I feel like that's the area of concern for many Ravens fans coming up in this week, the inside linebacking core, obviously Roquan Smith is one of the best, inside linebackers, can do it all, off ball, can get out to the quarterback, very stout against the run. Trenton Simpson, another guy who stepped into that role. How has he transitioned into that starting role? And really, Baker's had a lot of success in the middle of the field, and that's going to kind of play into the safeties as well, and we'll get into that. But as far as the linebackers, those short routes, those intermediate routes, maybe ran by tight ends, ran by backs coming across the middle, even slot receivers that they're asked to pick up here and now, because I know just like the Bucs, sometimes those linebackers are dropped in coverage and force especially in zone, pick up a guy like Chris Godwin coming across the middle. What's been the middle of the field like for the Ravens? How they defended it, and what have you seen out of Simpson in year two?
It's been a struggle. The Bucs are going to attack the middle of the field, because the inside Roquan is a good tackler, but sometimes he gets lost in coverage. Trenton Simpson's a young guy; he's still trying to find his way. So he was good, and he he was good in the preseason in coverage, which you can't really judge anything on. So he's had some struggles in the regular season. So in Washington last week, I'm sure the Bucs are watching that tape, how Washington was able to exploit the middle of the field because there's a big gap in there between the secondary and the linebackers. So that's an area to watch. I think Mayfield is going to hit some passes in the middle of the field, intermediate passes, and gain some big time yards. That'll be. And I asked John Harbaugh about that on Monday about how the Washington was able to get so many yards in the middle of the field as far as coverage goes. And he says they were chunk plays. They were things that can be corrected. But again, until it's fixed, the Buccaneers will be able to exploit that.
And that plays right into the secondary too. Tackling has been an issue for the secondary a little bit there as well. And if you're getting the ball over the heads of the linebackers, and now it's up to the safeties and cornerbacks to chase some of these guys down. And they've struggled a little bit in that area. They've struggled with the deep ball, defending the deep ball. They've struggled on the outside, with their cornerbacks as well. They have a good duo out there with Marlon Humphrey and yes, yeah. So they have a good duo out there. They've just been struggling. You mentioned it earlier in the pod when we were talking about the defensive side of the ball, how the front seven's been the least of the worries. Maybe the middle linebackers of that front seven in middle of the field coverage, but it's really been what's going on in the back end. Just what has been the issue there, and kind of what is the fear with a dynamic duo. And Mike Evans' injury report just came out. Mike Evans did not practice again today with a hamstring. He was working with a trainer, but by all indications, he's going to be playing this game Monday. Whether he's on a snap count or not remains to be seen. But still, if you play 50 snaps and 25 of them are Mike Evans snaps, that's still something you got to really worry about. And there's also the opportunity for them to use him as a decoy too. What's been the issue there so far in the back end?
They struggle in man coverage. Number one, they do a lot of man coverage, and they're getting beat by better players. Rashee Rice, Kansas City, 7 catches, 103 yards. Devontae Adams, 9 catches, 110 yards. They did a good job against CeeDee Lamb against the Cowboys in week 3, but Jake Ferguson, the tight end, middle of the field, 6 catches, 95 yards. And then Jamar Chase and T. Higgins went off. Chase, 10 catches, 193 yards, 2 touchdowns. T. Higgins, 9 catches, 83 yards, 2 touchdowns. And Terry McLaurin last week for Washington, 6 catches, 53 yards, but he still had 2 touchdowns. So they're having trouble against these premier wide receivers, and they're going to get 2 of the best this week, with Godwin and Evans. I just think it's not a really good matchup for the Ravens with these 2 guys. They go man coverage. You might see a lot of nickel and dime as far as they got to go more to a zone against these guys, because Evans is a strong physical wide receiver, which is not playing to the Ravens' strengths at all. They have trouble with these guys who are big and physical and can get downfield. So, the Ravens are the 31st ranked passing defense. And if there's one thing that could be their albatross this season, it's going to be the secondary. So it needs to be cleaned up quickly. I was even thinking, at the trade deadline, they had a cornerback or a safety to sort of give some more support there. Because Marcus Williams, Kyle Hamilton, he was banged up in training camp. He's playing better. I thought he was maybe a little more injured they let on early in the season, but he's playing better now. They haven't got anything out of Marcus Williams. Eddie Jackson, also another guy that I get much production from. So then they get more production from their safeties. And Nate Wiggins, he's a rookie. Teams are picking on him. And Baker Mayfield, if he's out there, they're going to pick on him. They're going to throw at him. Baker Mayfield's a veteran quarterback. He knows where these guys are on the field. So look for the Buccaneers to chuck the ball downfield and sort of test the secondary. And I think this game is going to be a shootout.
As far as their struggles, has it been even in the red zone? Has that been somewhere where they've struggled against? Because obviously Mike Evans eats in the red zone, with that big body being able to. Has it been mostly, marching down the field, or has there been a lot of issues in the red zone for this cornerback group too?
It's been deep passes. That's what's killed them, because when they get in the red zone, the front 7 can take over. And they're better. They're going to pressure the quarterback and getting sacks in the red zone. So the red zone defense, they're 25th in the league. And that's mostly because they have trouble covering wide receivers. And look, Devontae Adams had some phenomenal catches. Jamar Chase, he caught a screen pass and ran 60 yards for a touchdown. So the issues have been all over as far as secondary. They're getting big plays downfield. They're getting a lot of PIs, which is as good as good as a pass downfield. And so the red zone, they're getting a lot of penalties also inside the red zone. So that needs to be cleaned up.
Yeah. One thing they've been really good at is third downs, 30 of 73, not letting really many teams convert, which is building up to their leads. Last year, they led in every single game except for at one point or another, except for the game against the Steelers. So that's something that's been really a strong side of them, and let them play their game. I think the Bucs, the keys there, you got to get out, start out hot, and really kind of dictate the game the way you want to play. Allow Bowles to call the defense he wants to play, which is what he does best when the lead. You saw it last week against New Orleans Saints. So I guess my question for you is, breaking down both sides of the ball as we've done, if the Ravens are going to win this game, what did they do successfully, maybe exploit on offense?
They got to score points, and they got to be able to, if the Buccaneers stack the box, stop the run, Lamar's got to make the plays downfield like he has. I think they got to score 30 or more points to win this game. And I think that's the way it's going to go. I think the Ravens got to score points. The Buccaneers got points on the board, but 50 points on the board last week, so they can score, So I think the Ravens are going to be able to shut down the Buccaneers running game, but I think they're going to have a problem with Baker Mayfield throwing the ball downfield because he's a guy, he played for the Browns. He knows the Ravens pretty well. He knows his team. They played against each other in the AFC North. So, there's no fear there, and he understands, what they bring. So there's a sense of familiarity there with those two. But so the Ravens have to score. They're going to score. And Derrick Henry, the thing with Henry is, even though he's been off to a couple slow starts in the first quarter, he wears teams down, and that's going to be the key. And Todd Monken has been very smart giving him the ball, because he's once he gets downhill, he's hard to tackle, and he'll break a 30, 40-yard run, and it's demoralizing to a defense. So and the Ravens have to control the ball, keep Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers offense off the field, and they got to score a lot of points.
What do they got to do on defense in order to win this game?
They got to keep Baker Mayfield under pressure. I think they got to play a lot of zone to keep his receivers. They can do a bend not break defense against the Buccaneers. I think if they can hold Tampa Bay to field goals instead of touchdowns, that'll be key. I do think that they're Tampa Bay's gonna be able to move the ball.
If the Buccaneers win this game, what do they do on offense to win this game?
They put up 35, 36 points. That's going to be the key for them. It's going to be a high scoring game, I think. But the Buccaneers, and they got to avoid turnovers. The Ravens are very good at turning turnovers into points. So that's going to be another big key of this game.
And if they they did what on defense?
On defense, if they shut down Derrick Henry, the running game, they're going to win.
Yeah. Okay.
If they keep Derrick Henry to 60 yards, they have a really good chance of winning.
Awesome. All right. We'll wrap it up. Give me a score prediction, and then we'll get you on out of here.
I said 37-34 Ravens.
Oh, high scoring game on Monday Night Football. Definitely not going to be bored at all with that type of game. Before we get you out of here, go ahead, promote yourself. Where can people find your work if they want to stay in touch with the Ravens all season? Maybe a rematch in the Super Bowl if they both teams make it. Who knows? Where can they find you?
BaltimoreSports.com. We're at Ravens practice every day, covering the games, 3-4 stories a day, and on Twitter at Todd Karpovich.
Awesome, Todd. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday.
Thank you. Good seeing you, buddy. Thank you.
Bye. There you have it. Kind of inside the enemy lines. Break down what the Bucs need to do. Score points. We know that, but I think the biggest thing is we haven't seen this Buccaneers defense as a whole unit, and it looks like they're going to have pretty much everyone back. Obviously, Servassier is on, Dennis is on injury reserve, but it looks like Christian Izien from the injury report he's going to be able to play this week. Will Golston will be back, even though he's been banged up. We'll see if Ernest Brown gets reinstated off that injured reserve list. Chris Braswell, full participation. Most of these injuries are on the defensive side outside of Jamel Dean, but I think really the duo of Zion McCollum and it looks like it's going to be Tyreek Funderburk can handle Rashad Bateman and Zay Flowers. So we'll see how that all plays out. It's going to be really interesting on offense. The Bucs need to get Mike and Chris involved early. I forgot to ask him about Arthur Mollett, their cornerback. He's dealing with an injury as well. Limited in practice all week with a knee and a hamstring injury. That's not good for a team that a cornerback that needs to run and keep up with Chris, who's in putting up the best season, on track to put up the best season of his career. So I think those are going to be spots where the Bucs need to exploit. They need to get them going quick. They need to get points on the board quick. Try to establish the run, but don't overcommit to it, because if you do that, and now you start to get behind because you're wasting downs because you can't move the ball. Again, from what he said, big Bucky Irving game. He's got to be the guy that's being shifty, making guys miss, bouncing stuff to the outside and getting in space like that. Sean Tucker as well. I don't know, with Rachaad White, he's been limiting. Trending is probably going to play, but I don't know if this is a big Rachaad White game for you. I think you got to go with these guys, the faster backs. Sean Tucker's the fastest back on the roster. Bucky Irving is the shiftiest back on the roster. I think those guys are going to be the ones that you need to feed. K-Dot, get him involved in the middle of the field. You got to kind of get him involved. You heard it there. Middle of the field has been a soft spot for them. It's been a struggle for them, coverage throughout the first 6 weeks of the season. So get that area involved. Ferguson, Kelsey, get those guys. They've had some success. Going back to last season, not Kelsey, obviously in the opener was terrible, but last season, the AFC Championship game, he scored the first points of the game. Get K-Dot and available, and get him out in the middle of the field and figure out what you need to do to slow that pass rush down, because Kyle Van Noy's having a resurgence. 9 sacks last year, 6 sacks in the first 6 games this year. They've got some guys who can get after it as well. So on defense, you really got to slow down that rushing game, and you got to slow it down. It's the same thing I said against the Washington Commanders and against Eagles. You have to play smart run defense because you got to contain too. At any point, Lamar Jackson can just say boop, and dip it out and run and get a huge gain, pick up a first down, pick up a touchdown, pick up a chunk yardage play. You got to play smart run defense where you're trying to shut down Derrick Henry. We'll see what it looks like with Vita, and Kalijah Kancey this year. Alvin Kamara's never been a real giant threat as a running back, more that dual threat. Derrick Henry is a running back, a throwback running back who will run the ball down your throat. Let's see how those guys do. They're going to be very important. Levante David. This is a KJ Britt game. As much as you guys have been on KJ Britt about his lack of mobility, he's a classic 2-down thumper. He needs to set the tone early. He needs to set the tone early against Derrick Henry. This is a KJ Britt game all over it. A team that runs the ball a lot, runs it with a power rusher. He needs to show up. He needs to make sure that he's sound in his tackling, sound in his gaps, and he's stuffing Derrick Henry. So, we need a big game out of KJ Britt this week in order, I think, for them to slow down that rushing. Now, when Lamar dips out, you wish you didn't have. You might not wish you had KJ Britt because he ain't going to track him down. But as far as running in between the tackles, this is a big KJ Britt game. So he needs to be on his P's and Q's. And then, they're going to move Zay Flowers around. I don't think Zion will have any trouble with him. Tyreek's going to have to step up because it looks like Jamel Dean's going to miss this game, and it's going to be fun to Burke in. He's going to have to step up. He got his first action, 60 plays last week. A lot to learn from that, a lot to like from that. But there's a lot to like about this kid. That's why even missing the last 2 weeks of training camp, they knew that he was going to make the roster. He's going to be one of those undrafted kind of gems that the Bucs find, and they hit on him, it seems like, every year. And I think he's going to be one of them. He'll probably get beat a few times, and there'll be plays where you're like, oh, my goodness. But I think for the most part, he's going to have a solid game, especially when he's asked to cover Rashad Bateman. When he gets on Zay Flowers, it might be a little interesting, and they're definitely going to want to give him a little help over the top. But I think they can effectively try to take those tight ends away. Isaiah Likely in the red zone is always going to be a threat. But Mark Andrews, came alive last week, but he struggled as well too. So, for the Bucs defense, you got to slow down the run. You got to contain, and you got to really, force Lamar Jackson to make some mistakes. And it's not easier said than done. Again, only 2 interceptions on the season. He's really been a very smart passer, an accurate passer, and a guy who's not making many mistakes. But if you can force him into a mistake, I think this is going to come down to a turnover battle. Whoever wins that, I think is going to have a good shot, which unfortunately, you kind of give the edge to the Ravens. So this is a game where many people looked at the schedule and you're like, oh, wow, that's probably a loss, the Ravens on Monday Night Football. But the way these two teams have played, I think you come around to saying, okay, well, maybe this is going to be a lot closer than I thought it could have been. And I'm on that page right now where I think it's going to be a lot closer than what I thought it was going to be. Don't hate me, Bucs Nation. I still had the Bucs falling short on this one. I think it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be as high scoring as 37-34, but I do think both of these teams have a shot to jump into that upper 20s, 30s. I'm going to go 31-28 Ravens in a close game that I think comes down to the wire. Back and forth, lead changes, a really interesting game. The Ravens have had the Bucs numbers since they started playing with each other. I think back in 2002, I think, or 2000 was their first matchup. 2000, yeah, it's been a while. But they lead the series 5-2. The last last win against the Bucs came in 2022 and a 27-22 loss, but they've only played seven times. So, I don't think this is the time where the Bucs start whittling that and get up to make up those numbers. So I have the Bucs losing 31-28, close game, down to the wire. But again, I have them coming back next week, winning the creamsicles. So don't be too mad. But that's going to do it for me. I appreciate everyone who's in here, stopping by in the comments. Appreciate everyone on Twitter watching. Make sure you come to YouTube, like, subscribe, turn on reminders if you haven't already on YouTube. Appreciate the loyal listeners who always pop in here. Thank you, guys. Like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Before we get out of here, we're going to give a big shout out to our another sponsor over here, Mosley Heating and Air. It's beautiful down in Tampa right now, so perfect time to have your system maintenance if you're looking to get that done, because when the Florida heat hits hard, trust Mosley Heating and Air to keep you cool and comfortable with over 25 years of experience. Their family-owned business knows what it takes to keep your home's HVAC system running smoothly. Need a repair, a new system, or maintenance? Right now is the perfect time for it. They've got you covered. Call Mosley Heating and Air at 813-230-3742 or visit Mosley Heating and Air. Mosley Heating and Air, where comfort meets reliability. So big shout out to them. Again, if you need any system work done, now is the time to do it while we're in this cold front. So you don't have to have them shut down the AC for a couple hours in your home. But big shout out to them. Big shout out to Bucs Cruise. Big shout out to you guys. Big shout out to the producers in the back, Shane, my man. That's going to do it for me here on the Sick Podcast Network at Pirate Parlay. Again, I'm your host, JC Allen, saying see you later. Peace out. We'll talk to you after the game.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Pirate Parlay on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.